Hello, and welcome to the Computer Electronic Accommodations Program, CAP, webinar on how to submit a CAP Wounded Service Member or WSM request. My name is Lindsay Foley, and I'll be presenting today's webinar. The purpose of today's webinar is to provide an overview on how to submit a WSM request, to look at who is able to submit a request and how that may affect the process, and to discuss the difference between a needs assessment questionnaire and a direct submission request. Let's get started. You will first need to access the CAP WSM website by going to www.cap.mil/WSM. To initiate the request submission process, you will begin by clicking the blue Get Started Now button on the CAP WSM homepage. You will first be asked two questions regarding for whom the request is being submitted and if the person to be accommodated is currently active duty. Selecting myself or another person will make the request form more applicable to the individual filling it out. If you select myself, the request form will then ask you what you are experiencing, and if you select another person, the request form will then ask what the person to be accommodated is experiencing. Please note that for this webinar, we have selected another person. Whether you are an active duty service member or a POC submitting the request for an active duty service member, you will select yes when asked, is the person to be accommodated currently on active duty with the U.S. military? After making the appropriate selections, you will then hit continue to move directly to the WSM website. On the next page, you are given the option to request specific products or to have CAP suggest products based on the service member's limitations. We will first look at the process of submitting a needs assessment questionnaire. To begin the needs assessment process, start by selecting the option, I would like for CAP to recommend solutions for me based on the employee's limitations. We will later return to this page to address the situation of the service member or the POC, knowing exactly which products are wanted. When on the Request an Accommodation from CAP page, select the appropriate option from the drop-down menu to indicate who you are making this request for. For example, if you're a medical professional, you would use the option, I am a physician or therapist referring on behalf of an active duty service member. If you are submitting on behalf of a service member, please ensure to provide the service member's information when answering the questions, what department do you work for, and for which agency. For example, if you're a medical professional or a case manager that works for the VA, you would select the service member's military branch and the military treatment facility they are associated with for the department and the agency instead of selecting the VA. The I Need a Recommendation page will allow you to select the functional limitation or limitations that the service member is experiencing. Please ensure to select all limitation categories that may apply. The Justification page will allow CAP to gain specific information on the service member and their limitations. On the Justification page, you will find blank text fields where you may enter in requested information. The information requested for the justification includes the service member's diagnosis, the prognosis, meaning whether it is presumably going to improve or if it is a permanent condition, if the service member is currently receiving any form of therapy or treatment, how the medical diagnosis is functionally limiting to the service member, and if there are any vocational pursuits the service member is currently involved in. Once you have finished providing the requested information in the justification, you will then be asked to provide contact and delivery information. We ask that you please provide us with the service member's name as well as a valid email address. An email address is required, however, it does not have to be the service member's government email address, but it should be one that the service member checks regularly. Items can be delivered to the service member's home address or to a medical professional or a case manager at a military treatment facility. Please ensure that the delivery address that is provided is valid and deliverable, and please note that CAP is unable to ship to P.O. Box addresses. We also request that valid contact information be provided for the service member's physician or therapist and their case manager or supervisor. The following information will be requested: the name and title of the service member's physician or therapist, a valid phone number and government email for the physician or therapist, the name of the service member's case manager or supervisor, and a valid phone number and email address for the case manager or supervisor. Please note that a government email address is not required for both the physician or therapist and the case manager or supervisor. However, a government email address must be provided for one on the request. On the request form, you will also be asked to provide the following information. Has the service member used CAP services before at a different agency? The pay grade or level of the service member? Does the service member have a computer? And where did you hear about CAP and if it was at a specific event? Completing this information accurately will help us to better assist our service members as well as our medical professionals and our case managers. After completing the request form and before you submit your CAP request, you will be asked to review the information that you have provided. This is to ensure that all the information you've provided was entered correctly. Please note that this page does not mean that you've submitted your request. It is merely a review page. After reviewing your request to ensure all the information provided is correct, please click the Submit Request button at the bottom of the page to officially submit your CAP request. Once you have submitted the request, you will receive an automatically generated email and a new congratulations page will come up. This will be how you know that the request form has been completed and submitted. Now that we know how to submit a needs assessment questionnaire, I'd like to take a step back and to show you what it looks like to submit a request if you already know what the service member needs. Returning to this original screen, we will now take a look at how to submit a CAP WSM request for specific products. If the service member or the POC knows exactly the products which will work best based on the service member's limitations, they may select the I know which solutions I need and just want to request them to begin the request process. As mentioned previously, when on the Request an Accommodation from CAP page, select the appropriate option from the drop-down menu to indicate who you are making this request for. Again, for example, if you're a medical professional, you would use the option I am a physician or therapist referring on behalf of an active duty service member. If you're submitting on behalf of a service member, again, please ensure to provide the service member's information when answering the questions. What department do you work for and for which agency? For example, if you're a medical professional or a case manager that works for the VA, you would select the service member's military branch and the military treatment facility they are associated with rather than selecting the VA. Again, as mentioned before, the I Need a Recommendation page will allow you to select the functional limitations the service member is experiencing. Please select all limitation categories that may apply to the service member. When submitting a request for a specific product based on the limitation selected, product categories will be provided. These products are broken up into categories to make searching for the desired products much easier. The categories will allow you to look through commonly requested items to find the appropriate tools in a more focused and centralized manner, and this will help to eliminate the need to look through many pages and product hunt for the ones that you're looking for. For example, if the service member or the service member's POC knows that the service member requires a memory queuing aid, they are able to click on the Queuing and Memory Aids category to view just the queuing and memory aids that CAP is able to provide. If you do not see the product you are looking for or know the exact name of the product you would like, you can search for this product in the Search by Product Name search engine. The Search by Product Name search engine will allow the service member or the service member's POC the ability to search for the exact product if they do not wish to look in the designated product category. Also on this page, if you're unable to find the product you need on the CAP website, you can request the product by typing it in through the link at the bottom of the page. Noted, can't find what you're looking for? You can type your product in. After selecting a category, browse through CAP's possible solutions and then select the products which would best fit the service member's needs. Then click Add to My Solutions. Once you've selected all products you feel best fit the service member's needs, click the Continue button at the bottom of the page to request these solutions. On the Review My Solutions page, you may review the items that you've selected. At the bottom of the page, you have the option to either add more solutions or to request the items you've selected. By clicking the Request My Solutions button, this will advance you to the next step in the request process. When submitting a request for specific products, CAP will ask different questions because we are not trying to figure out what the best products could be for the service member. On the Complete CAP WSM request page, you will be asked to provide a justification for the requested solutions. This justification should explain the service member's need for the requested items based on their limitations. Please remember, all requested items must be reasonable and appropriate solutions based on the service member's diagnosed conditions and their limitations that they're experiencing. CAP is unable to provide accommodations based solely on convenience or for prevention. An example of this would be CAP being able to provide an iPad versus an iPod Touch for a memory queuing aid. Although an iPad may be a more desirable memory queuing aid, the iPod Touch is most often sufficient for an individual. One thing I'd like to point out, if you're experiencing any difficulty writing a justification for the products you've selected, please view the quick tip located on the left side of the justification box. This short video will provide a brief explanation on the specific information we are looking for in the justification. On this page, you will also be asked to provide the service member's name and contact information. As mentioned before, please ensure to provide us with the service member's name and a valid email address and delivery address. Once you have entered all the requested information, please click Continue at the bottom of the screen. This portion of the request form is identical with both submission methods. As I mentioned before, you will need to include the relevant contact information for the service member's physician or therapist, as well as their case manager or supervisor. Also on the contact information page, there are questions regarding the service member's previous use of CAP services, the service member's pay grade or level, if the service member currently has a computer, and how you heard about CAP. Completing this information accurately will allow us to better assist the service member as well as our medical professionals and our case managers. Once all the information has been entered, please click Continue at the bottom of the page to advance to the next step in the request process. After completing the request form and before submitting your CAP request, you will be asked to review the information you have provided in order to ensure all the information was entered correctly. Again, please note that this page does not mean that you have submitted your request. It is merely a review page. Again, please ensure to click the Submit Request button at the bottom of the page once you have reviewed all of the information. Once you have submitted the request, you will receive an automatically generated email and a new congratulations page will come up. This will be how you know that you've completed the request form. Now that we have gone through the process of how to submit a direct submission versus a needs assessment request, let's take a look at the main difference between these two types of requests. A direct submission is submitted when the submitting individual already knows the products that are needed. This request may be submitted by the service member, the case manager, or the medical professional. Medical documentation may be requested for verification of the diagnosed conditions and limitations, or it may be requested to confirm the service member's needs of the requested solutions. Needs assessments are submitted when the submitting individual would like for CAP to assess the service member and to provide suggestions for possible accommodations. An online questionnaire is completed and information such as diagnoses, functional limitations, and vocational goals are requested. Medical documentation may be requested for verification of limitations and/or for CAP staff to better gain understanding of the service member's limitations. After all the information has been received and reviewed, CAP will then work with the service member, the case manager, and/or the medical professional to help identify the most appropriate solutions for the service member. When an individual submits a CAP WSM request, there is some information that will always be required. This includes the service member's name and their valid contact information, a valid shipping address in which items may be delivered. This address may be to the medical professional or to the case manager at the military treatment facility, to the service member's home, or to the service member's agency. Again, as mentioned before, please note that CAP is unable to ship to P.O. Box addresses. Valid contact information for the service member's POC will also be requested, and the justification in support of any items that are being requested. Essentially, this justification must answer the question, how do the limitations pair with the capabilities of the requested tool? When a service member or a case manager submits a request, medical documentation will almost always be required. This medical documentation may be requested from a medical professional if CAP would like additional information or additional explanation on the service member's limitations. It's not necessarily requested for verification of the service member's diagnoses. The medical documentation may not be requested if the service member is an existing CAP customer and if their limitations have already been verified. An example of this would be if a cognitive tool is requested for an existing service member that was previously provided cognitive accommodations, medical documentation would not be required for this verification. Additional information, such as a computer specifications form, may also be requested as well, depending upon the solutions that are being requested. In closing, thank you for your interest in CAP's WSM initiative and for accessing this webinar on how to submit a WSM request. If you have any questions or would like any additional information about CAP and CAP services, please contact us by phone at 703-614-8416 or by email at cap.wsm@mail.mil. Thank you.